Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on Valentine's Day. I'm joined by Jonathan Leafe, and we will be exploring the best way to forge great relationships between you and your agency. For years, many businesses have turned to agencies for support, whether it be a one-off project or more consistent, ongoing support. And in lots of cases, these relationships bring huge value to the businesses that invest in agencies, and they can be very rewarding. However, there are, of course, cases where sometimes as a client, you feel left thinking, questioning the value that you've experienced from working with an agency. So before we go any further, let me introduce you to Jonathan. Jonathan founded an agency in 1993, where he successfully grew that agency to a team of 40 people before exiting in recent years. And he now works with a range of agency clients where he helps share his wealth of knowledge and experience. However, working in an agency for many years, he's managed to experience things also from the client side. He's definitely not shy of client feedback and understanding what they're looking for from a relationship. So for today, Jonathan, you'll have your client hat on as we delve into what clients look for from their agency. Hello, Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining.
Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Yeah. And you, thank you for taking time out of your day. I've noticed you've moved all your cards out the way, and we've got a clear.
Yeah. Sorry, the mailman couldn't get the sack through the door. Yeah, used to it. Well, mainly from my mum, obviously. But.
So yeah, as we touched on, obviously it's like any relationship, it needs work. It can be exciting from the start, but then it's how to keep that relationship going. Do you think it's important that when you're looking to choose an agency, they've got relevant experience of your industry?
Yeah, I think that's obviously better, but I don't think it's essential. I mean, sometimes an agency coming alongside you that hasn't got any experience in your industry is going to ask lots of sort of like questions that you won't have thought of. Sometimes there's lots of assumptions made by people who think they know something, and then all the daft questions, which sometimes are the most insightful, don't get asked. So whilst I think ostensibly, if you had the opportunity to hire an agency that has some experience, I don't think it's absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a nice part of being agency side. You get to learn so much about different businesses, don't you? And it's fascinating learning that whilst they're all different, they all have similar challenges, I guess, don't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a commonality through every business, whether it be large, medium, SMEs or PLCs. They all have customers, they all have team, they all need leadership. Some have products, some have services. But really, that's the mix that makes it work. And I think that's why, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I am a fan of agencies because they can come in and actually they're not bogged down with any politics of the actual organization. And they can see things that you wouldn't ordinarily see. And whilst you're looking, the old adage, you can't see the wood for the trees, whereas a good agency, get them coming in and they'll start to overturn every single stone. And ask all of the questions that need asking, whether it be looking at your products, looking at your services, looking at your team, looking at your clients, where those clients might be. Are they existing clients? Are they new businesses? So all of those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when businesses look to choose an agency, the natural place to start is either a recommendation or somebody who they've seen. They might look locally, they might look further afield. Is there any advice that you'd give in that quest to find?
Yeah, well, I think the worst thing you can do is do a Google search because that, actually probably the best thing that you can do is ask around, is look for the agency's work. I mean, this goes back to the old David Ogilvy thing in the 1970s, the father of modern advertising, I guess. And he always said, when looking for an agency, look at their work. Does the work sort of like fit in with what you're looking for? Get the recommendations. What do they like to work with? As people, as personalities, what do they stand for? Are they aligned with your business and how you operate? I think all of these things are important questions to ask. But the search should definitely start with recommendations, in my opinion. Find out people who know them.
And I suppose that's a two-way thing, isn't it? Really, as an agency, from our perspective, we're looking for clients who we feel, most honest agencies would say, we feel we're the best support for you on this particular journey that you're looking to go on. Do we align? It's always a two-way process at that stage, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, because it's what we were saying about the relationships. At the end of the day, everything does boil down to personalities and how you get on and how you communicate with each other. You don't necessarily need to be sort of like best buddies, but actually, I think that probably does help a little bit in a way that you can start to talk honestly about things. Sometimes you have to say things that the clients don't like to hear, and also vice versa. I mean, let's face it, agencies are not perfect either. So they've got to have broad shoulders when things are going wrong and move forward quickly together in the right direction. I think that's my best advice.
Yeah. And often businesses will come to an agency because there's a particular project. Is there any advice that you'd give to any businesses that are watching now thinking, where do I start? How do I put a brief together for an agency? I'm potentially shortlisted a couple of agencies. How do I give them the best understanding of what I'm looking to achieve?
Yeah, this is a really hard question, actually. And I think this goes to the root of why most relationships fail, because you think about it like a honeymoon. It starts off and of course, the red carpet's rolled out, the 5-star restaurants are booked, the best wine, everything is done like that at the start. It's all flowery and fireworks going off. But actually, you don't want that. I mean, that might impress you to start off with, but you want to look at what the relationship's going to be like in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years. It's got to be something which is sustainable. So I'm actually not a great fan of sort of like big brief writing and then sending it over to an agency for a response and seeing what they come back with. I think that always sets the relationship off in the wrong direction. I think the best thing is to do, rather than doing that, is to just go and spend time with the agency, ideally in their offices or in your offices. Just spend hours just talking through things and actually build the brief together, because you'll get better insights from the agency at that stage. And that often is the case when you do put these requests for presentations or pitches out to various agencies. Is what happens is that a lot of agencies will just put their very best people on these pitches to win the business. And of course, then they'll put the B or C team to actually deliver it, because the A team who did the pitch are already working on the next pitch. So for me, that doesn't make any sense. I think you've got to take the time to get to know the agency and then choose them, because actually the relationship will start to form, not on day one, but sort of like on month 1, month 2, month 3. It'll just develop as it goes on. You can't do that from a pitch or a presentation.
Do you think that pitches in general are sort of dying a death? Because actually, like you said a minute ago, look at the work. If you're looking at an agency, they should have work that they've done for their existing clients. Whilst it's not exactly your requirements, it gives you an idea of their capabilities. I mean, I know it certainly wouldn't lend itself to other industries. You wouldn't be looking for a builder. Could you just build me one wall so I can see if I approve of your work standards? You'd speak to existing clients. You'd go and look at and actually quite often I think the pitching stage can miss the brief anyway, because it's not the foundations, it's just the top level creative.
I think that's a superb analogy, actually, because you're absolutely right. I mean, that's you go and look at, if it's a builder, you go and look at what they built before. You ask the person who's living in the house, well, how was their experience working with that builder? What's the quality like, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do that with agencies. Why not do that with agencies? But for some reason, and for many years, it's always been the pitch has been the start of the relationship. And quite often, just going back on the old pitches, is that when the brief is done and the pitches come back and the agency is chosen on the strength and quality of their pitch, the brief changes and the creative that's been done is actually dumped. So it's a pointless exercise that doesn't serve the client or the agency actually.
Okay, tricky question next then. What about budgets?
Well, again, budgets, I think you've just got to be open as you possibly can be. Sometimes sometimes you don't know, and sometimes it evolves. So I think that's why those long conversations to start off with are the right way forward. You'll get better value for it, in all honesty, as a client, because you'll sit around the table, you'll form the brief, and if you've got a good agency, they'll turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, you said you want that, but you don't need that. This is what you need. And by the way, it's half the budget that you had in mind. So, that's what you'll get. You'll get good advice from the right agency. The agencies aren't trying to rinse you. Some are, I guess, but the vast majority of long-standing ones, like in Tynes, that have been on the planet for 15 years. You know, the only reason that you're still here is because you do a good job, people appreciate it, and the price is fair.
Yeah. I think I understand from client side it's a difficult one, because if somebody asked me in a different industry what's your budget, I wouldn't want to be offensive and give a budget that's completely unrealistic. So I think it is a working together with some sort of steer.
I guess what you could do there, Jane, is just from a client perspective, it just asks for options. You know, just say, well, okay, you know, what does this get me? What does that get me? You know, just give a good, better, best. You know, that's what agents should do anyway. You know, these are the options that you can have, and then not necessarily a menu, but at least the client then is in a position where they can have a look at stuff and say, well, yeah, I want the top package. You know, that's exactly what I want. Or do you know what? We're just going to feel our way into this, so we're just going to start small and maybe that will grow after that. So I think you've just got to be open and honest about all of these things.
Yeah, I think, like you said, though, agencies are looking to get the best for you, and the more we know within reason of where that budget kind of sits, then it gives us the opportunity to look at the best outcomes from the start, rather than build smaller and then have to try and add on.
Yeah, there's a restaurant analogy, isn't it? You sort of got to know if your client's coming in for a quick snack or they want a tasting menu. You know, you've got to sort of have some type of parameters. So yeah, discuss as much as you possibly can. I guess that's the best way of advising.
Yeah. And then would you say, are there any red flags that businesses looking to choose an agency should look out for when selecting that agency? Is there anything that would, for you, give sort of alarm bells going, warning signs?
Well, I think if you've done your due diligence and you've asked around, then that sort of like gets rid of most of them. But I guess going back to the pitching stage, if you've got an agency that's desperate to do the pitch, you know, and they put loads of effort into and things like that, I think that for me would send warning bells, because, you know, if they're that keen to get the business, what else is going on? Or, you know, if they're absolutely just focused on the pitch and the pitch itself, then you pretty much guarantee that the best workers or the best talent are working on the pitches and not actually on the delivery. And I, quite frankly, at best, it should be the other way around. I just don't think you should have a pitch team as such in an agency format. Many will disagree with that, but that's how I strongly believe about that.
I think also, I mean, obviously throughout lockdown, I think for us as an agency, we started working with clients further afield because everything opened up. Everyone was comfortable with meeting like this over video, but generally we tend to support local clients, and I do think that that's a big part of that initial stage. Go and check out the office, go and see the team, even speak to some of the team. Just don't take the founder's word for it. Say, I want to know who's in your team, what your premise is like, what field you get for the place. And I think all those things help you form a decision about a business and what they feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, a lot of agencies are now remote first, so that becomes a bit difficult. Or they're hybrids, or they're fully back in the office. You know, there are three. That's what you're looking at now. But I think you should definitely try and meet the agency on their territory, see what goes on, see how they work together, ask about their systems and processes and their delivery and what their philosophies are. All of those sort of things, yeah, and you probably get a better feel for an agency if they do have sort of like premises and you can go around the offices, etc. Other than that, you know, you should probably just want to meet on neutral territory, I guess. Yeah, that's what I would advise.
Thank you. I think you've given lots there for people who are looking to choose an agency to think about. We want to hear a little bit from client side. So, Jonathan, do you want to ask?
Yeah, well, I'll ask you directly, Jane. Tell me, is there still a requirement for marketing agencies with businesses with an in-house marketing team?
Well, in our opinion, there is. And actually, for us, we think that's a great way to get the best relationship with the client. We love working with businesses who have got the team there, who are really keen, they're totally pro-marketing, they understand the value that marketing brings. It takes the ownership off the founder of the business, who's obviously busy looking at how to grow the business, looking at taking care of the business. Marketing, of course, is an important aspect of that. But for us, absolutely, having a marketing team who recognises that their strengths are limited, or that they're, as a team, they're working on the core elements of delivering a marketing plan, but actually there are areas of expertise that it wouldn't make sense for them to employ on a full-time basis. I think for us, when we speak to businesses, we sort of say, do you employ a full legal team, or do you have a full HR team internally? And it's the same with marketing, really. everything changes, the software that we work on, the training for the team, really keeping up to date with everything that's changing as an industry is vitally important. And I think to try and bring that in as an in-house team of solely working on one client can be really demanding, really challenging. So I think that agency just brings that fresh perspective to things. They'll see something that they're perhaps working on for another client and think this might lend itself nicely to you as a team, where trying to get those idea generations, that exposure is very difficult as an in-house team. I think having an agency also excites the team internally because they've got somebody who appreciates what they're doing, whereas that can get a bit lost within the business as a whole because they're not a marketing business. So I think it's a great way to get the best out of working with an agency.
Yes, I mean, just a follow-on question from that really is, I mean, you mentioned on some of them, but can you sort of just give our listeners just a little bit more advice on what does an agency bring that an in-house team doesn't? I know you covered a few of the things, but there are sort of like quite a lot of things around that, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some fantastic in-house teams. I think there's some great people working in marketing internally. But I think what an agency brings is they're not employed full-time, so they do have to keep proving themselves. That is a contract that within reason can be ended. So an agency's got to win the work and keep winning the work. They are there as full-time support. So I think when you've got an in-house team, you've obviously got holidays, sick days to cover, whereas an agency is going to be there for you, thinking for you all the time, have a team that's dedicated and just looking to bring those ideas that support your team. I think any good agency is not looking to compete with that in-house team. They really want to make that internal team the heroes. So they're winning the work internally. It's very much a collaborative approach. But I think
that all sounds quite expensive to me, Jane. So is hiring an agency an expensive option?
I think, again, when you break it down, when you think if you're employing a team, you've got their salaries depending on how many people you've got in the team. Whereas actually when you work with an agency, it's looking more as the annual budget and what you're looking to receive from that agency in a year and what expertise they can bring. So perhaps you've got a developer who's supporting your account. You might have a top level creative, but you're not paying for them to be sat on your account full time. So I think it can be really actually a very cost effective way of dipping into a really talented range of skill sets without having to feel that you've got them sat on your books full time. So no, it's absolutely value to have an agency.
So we're talking agencies as we would expect. So come on, give us, spill the dirt. What are the downsides of working with an agency?
There aren't any, obviously. No, I think the downsides is obviously agencies should have proved themselves through the work, but I think where it can break down is the relationship, the service, the communication. And I think it is just maintaining that relationship. And I think what we've learned over our 15 years in business is no two clients are the same. So how one team likes to communicate will be different to how another client works. So I think where agencies, in my opinion, can go wrong is trying to shoehorn clients into this is our process, this is how we work. You client fit into how we work, and I think it just doesn't work. That's not real life. So I think that could potentially be a downside. So I think agencies do need to adapt. Obviously, we're constantly adapting with the services we provide, but how you actually manage that client relationship needs to be flexible and not get frustrated with the client. They are going to be different. They've all got their own characters and personalities.
Yeah. Okay. So another question that follows on from there: what frustrates agencies the most?
I think what frustrates agencies is when there isn't perhaps clarity from the client with who is managing that account. So I think, again, this comes back to how you develop your relationship from the start, really. Obviously, it's important that different people feel that they're valued from the client side. But I think when one person's saying we want it to go with this approach, and then quite quickly they're getting counteractive feedback saying, actually, we want to do this. I think but that comes down to having a good project manager, good account manager from the agency side to make sure that feedback isn't shared with the team and it's joined up and it's consistent, cohesive. And also that the agency has an opinion and doesn't just take that as given, because sometimes clients they've got lots of decisions that they're making. And in our opinion, sometimes you have to take that on board, but then come back and say, totally appreciate your thinking. Have you thought about this? Not to be challenging, but we're always looking to get the best. And I think most
agencies. So final question then, Jane. I mean, without sort of like giving a top line idea of the type of clients that you work with, but are agencies only for big businesses?
I think different agencies work with different size clients, and I think for us, we tend to find that we offer the best value and the best return on investment for clients when it is looking at a longer period of time. So whilst I know there are some agencies who would take a one-off project, I think that generally it's looking longer term. So I think certainly for startup businesses, it can be a tricky investment to have an agency. It might be more the freelance side of things, but I think no, I don't think you need to be a massive corporation to look at agency. I think it's just important that you're patient and not expect that agency is there to support your overall offering, not completely transform the business.
So I guess, well, thank you very much for that, Jane. I think we've covered probably the most important topics of this subject, which we could talk about this for hours. I guess we are sort of, my final thoughts on this really are that I think, like any relationship, the agency and the client have just got to work together for the benefit. They can't be looking over their shoulders thinking the agency is charging too much, and the agency can't be thinking we're not charging enough. I think you've got to get your heads together and just say, look, come on, let's agree what we're trying to achieve here and both go off in the same direction. I think an agency can massively enhance what a client can do. As you said, you know, the depth of different skill sets and knowledge and things like that. And the fact, and also that agencies are probably looking 2 or 3 years ahead of what's coming down the track. Whereas just really in a client setting, you probably can't do that, in all honesty. So, you know, you should be looking for your agency to constantly push you with new ideas and new advice. I think that's probably the most important thing. And then the relationship can last a long time. I mean, there's always another way of looking that an agency relationship should have a bit of churn, you know, to get into, but I don't necessarily buy into that. I think if you've got the right team and the right attitude to all of these sort of things, you can keep the relationship fresh and moving forward, you know. So I think it's been really well worthwhile doing this podcast with you, Jane.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think also it's really important, and it's something that we have in the team, is you've got to be able to give honest feedback as a team. And we say to clients, you know, we want to be the first people to hear if there's any niggle, even if it's something that feels minor and not important. And I think that's an important thing to have with your agency as well, that you just feel they can take this and we have to deliver it, because I think otherwise those frustrations build up and become a bigger deal, if you like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, well, no, it's great speaking with you, Jane.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing you quite soon.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
enjoy the rest of your Valentine's Day. I'm sure you're waiting for champagne, chocolates, caviar when you get home.
Yeah, all that, I'm sure. Enjoy.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Have a lovely week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.